Hey YouTubers, it's me, Lonnie Clark, Nuts for Art. I think my grandson fixed my webcam up to my computer, so now I can just record my videos and upload them, which is less nerve-wracking for me, so I'm glad about that. Anyways, I'm back. I think this is number 8 series in the series with Weapons in Space by Dr. Karl Grossman. And we are on page, I'm just going to get into it. We are on page 55, new subtitle called Internal Opposition. I'll look at you. I don't know if it matters if I look at you because I'm not looking when I'm reading. Anyways, there are I'm extending my hand right in front. Well, let me get to it. I always find reasons like to delay, don't I? There are Democrats, of course, emphatically against the U.S. weaponization of space by the United States. One has been former U.S. Senator Charles Robb of Virginia, defeated for re-election in 2000, who declared in 1999, the United States and other nations have rightly avoided placing weapons in space. A space-based arms race could be essentially irreversible. It defies reason to assume that nations would sit idle while the United States invests billions of dollars in weaponizing space, leaving them at an unprecedented disadvantage. Once this genie is out of the bottle, there is no way to put it back in. We could never afford to bring all these systems back to Earth, and destroying them would be equally unfeasible, because the billions of pieces of space debris would jeopardize commercial satellites and manned missions. Moreover, said Robb, himself a former military officer, if space becomes a war zone, the fog of war could reach entirely a new density. Wow, that's an understatement. I'm going to reshift my chair. Hang on. It's not actually a chair I'm sitting on, that's why I'm bouncing it. People that are watching me on video can see I'm actually sitting on a ball. Okay, let's get into this. This is really, I don't know how you guys feel about this book, but they know what they're doing. Let's just put it to you that way. This is not a secret. And in the House of Representatives, leading opponents to Star Wars include Cynthia McKinney of Georgia, Lynn Woolsey of California, and Dennis Kucinich, all of whom were chased out of Congress. Cynthia McKinney was literally chased out of Congress. Leave Star Wars to the movies, declared McKinney on the House floor on April 11, 2000, as the three made an effort to stop the missile defense program. April 11, 2000. Wow. I bet you under the Unpatriot Act that there's some provision that provides for Star Wars. Those rats. The U.S. Space Command calls for expanded warfighting capabilities in outer space. The guiding words in this country, said Kucinich, ought to be, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," not "war be done in earth as it is on heaven." Let us work for peace on earth, not war in space. That week, Kucinich gave the keynote address at the 2000 International Meeting of the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. We know that moving forward with a national missile defense system will set the stage for the advancement and proliferation of nuclear weapons in space, he said. We know that once we continue down this road, we're going to be locked into funding an industry that makes missiles and anti-missiles and creates policies to promote the use of missiles and more spending on missiles. Well, that's actually what happened, isn't it? He asked what happened to the Cold War benefit. There's only a restless, ceaseless arms race that rides the newest technological wave to continue to drain our national resources, to continue to create fear in America, to continue to create fear abroad, to continue to make the world less safe, to continue to drive our national consciousness downward. Kucinich spoke of the opposition of the United States in the UN to the resolution seeking to prevent an arms race in outer space by reaffirming the Outer Space Treaty. It's my belief that the United States must sign on and send the message to the world that space is for peace, not war. Unfortunately, there are policymakers who are aimed at having the country make a statement totally the opposite. He dismissed the claim by advocates of the missile defense system that the system is not Star Wars. I don't understand the sentence, so I'm going to read it again. I'm sorry about that, guys. He dismissed the claim by advocates of the missile defense system that the Star Wars system is not Star Wars all over again. It's ground wars. Let's name names, he went on. Lockheed Martin, TRW, Boeing. They now have a contract to build the space-based laser weapons that will allow the follow-on technology to ballistic missile defense. Wow. This weapon system will enable the U.S. to have offensive capability in space, as they call for by, as he held up, the vision for 2020. Man, they got a vision for 2020 like we're, 2 years away? Don't you think it's weird that they have this vision for 2020 and yet they're doing the Olympics in 2020 in Fukushima? I mean, I guess they're commemorating Murder, Death, Kill in 2020. Outrageous, my dear. Simply outrageous. Okay. It seems that Orwell's vision of... this is Kucinich going on. It seems that Orwell's vision of 1984 just follows the curve of time, and now it's up to us into 2020, where the vision of the... Now it's taken us into 2020, where the vision of the United States Space Command is for war in space, said Kucinich. Because what this states is that the U.S. Space Command intends to control and dominate space, seize the heavens, the high ground. We are creating the seeds of the destruction of people all over the world, and it inevitably will come back to this country as well. And he said to applause, excuse me, I'm going to say that whole thing again. We're creating the seeds of destruction of people all over the world, and it inevitably will come back to this country as well, he said to applause. I think that we have a wonderful country, and I'm proud to be a member of the United States Congress serving our country, said Kucinich. But if we love our country, then if we see our country taking a path that is dangerous, that we must help our country by challenging our country to do the right thing and not the wrong thing, he said to more applause. That's why we like Dennis Kucinich. We have to address this as a moral issue as well, he said, because it is a moral issue. We're a country that should be turning swords into plowshares, not into fashioning new, technologically superior swords of Damascus over the populations of the world. We cannot survive as a nation with this approach. In the 1980s, too, there were members of Congress, not many, who were vigorously challenging Star Wars. Some, such as Bernie Frank, a Massachusetts Democrat, are still there. He introduced resolutions in 1983 and 1984 calling for international negotiations for the ban on weapons of any kind in space. Neither bill came even close to passing. And in recent votes for missile defense, the numbers have been lopsided for deployment of missile defense, even after tests of the systems have failed. Let's just keep pouring money into it, okay? Now, with the Bush-Cheney takeover, the U.S. has an administration highly enthusiastic, gung-ho for Star Wars. Bush said during the presidential campaign that he would deploy missile defense as soon as possible. His administration would develop a new architect for American defense for decades to come, wrote Washington Post reporter Walter Pincus. His concept, which has encountered broad support among congressional Republicans, appears to be nearly identical to the missile shield proposed by his father. Yeah, we believe that. Bush has a grandiose scheme for a real all-out Star Wars scenario, as a Washington Post columnist, Mary McGregory, described it. Oh my gosh. The Bush-Cheney team is loaded with links to the corporations most deeply involved in U.S. plans for waging war in space. Indeed, Cheney is a former member of the board of TRW. His wife, Lynn Cheney, recently left the board of Lockheed Martin. I wrote the Republican Party's foreign policy platform, Bruce Jackson, Vice President of Corporate Strategy and Development of Lockheed Martin, proudly told me in the interview. Jackson said he was selected to be the overall chairman of the Foreign Policy Platform Committee at the Republican National Convention, at which he was a delegate. Thus, the Bush administration will be using a foreign policy platform admittedly written by a top executive of Lockheed Martin, the world's biggest weapons manufacturer and central to the U.S. war space preparations. Wow. Jackson said that during the campaign he did not lead the advocacy for full development of missile defense because, considering Lockheed Martin's heavy involvement, that would be an implicit conflict of interest with my day job. Really, you think? Gosh. Hadley is a member, said Jackson, of the Vulcans. This is the name given in the Bush administration to an eight-member group which during the campaign advised Bush on foreign policy and also included Condoleezza Rice, appointed National Security Council Director. Jackson and Hadley had also worked closely on such an entity called the Committee to Expand NATO. Jackson is president of this entity, based in the Washington office of the right-wing American Enterprise Institute. Hadley is its secretary. Hadley is also a member of the National Security Council staff during the earlier Bush administration. He has been appointed deputy director of the National Security Council in the new Bush administration. Wow. Space is going to be important. It has a great future in the military, Hadley said, speaking as an advisor to Bush. Told the Air Force Association in the address in its national convention, September 11th, 2000. I hate coincidences. These kinds of things make my spine crawl. Space is going to be important. It has a great future in the military, Hadley, speaking as an advisor to Bush, told the Air Force Association in an address to its national convention on September 11, 2000. He stated that Bush's concern has been that the Clinton administration's proposal do not do the right job, and it doesn't reflect a real commitment to missile defense. This is an administration that has delayed on that issue and is not moving as fast as he thinks we could. Wow. In the Bush choice of Donald Rumsfeld as U.S. Secretary of Defense, the U.S. got a man whom the Washington Post called the leading proponent not only of national missile defenses, but also of U.S. efforts to take control of outer space. Oh my God. Really? You know what that means, you guys? That means there's a whole bunch of stuff we know absolutely nothing about. We think we're seeing it, that there's like this second set of government that we barely are beginning to realize took over. This is unbelievable. Okay, where did I start? Okay, Don's Rumsfeld. I hate this guy. I don't hate him. I have to send him love. I don't hate him. I don't hate Don Rumsfeld. I forgive him. In 1998, a U.S. commission headed by Rumsfeld, most of its members appointed by the then House Speaker Newt Gingrich and Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott, both arch conservatives, reversed a 1995 finding by the nation's intelligence agencies that the country was not in imminent danger from ballistic missiles developed by new powers. The report of the commissions to assess the ballistic missile threat to the United States, which became known as the Rumsfeld Commission, claimed that rogue states posed such a threat, thus justifying prompt deployment of missile defense. Announcing his naming of Rumsfeld as Defense Secretary, Bush declared that he was most impressed by the work of the Rumsfeld Commission. With Rumsfeld, a former Defense Secretary, back in the position again, I'm going to read this again. With Rumsfeld, a former Defense Secretary, back in that position again, we'll have a person who is wise on the subject of missile defense, unquote. Bush went on, we've got a great opportunity in America to redefine how wars are fought and won. Our nation is well positioned to use technologies to redefine the military. Rumsfeld has been described by the avidly pro-Star Wars right-wing Center for Security Policy as a trusted advisor and a financial supporter, and in 1998 was awarded the Keeper of the Flame Award. The Center's advisory board includes such Star Wars promoters as Edward Teller, the murderer. Karl Grossman didn't write that. That's my opinion of the guy. And Lockheed Martin executives, including Bruce Jackson. Says Gagnon of the Bush-Cheney administration, this so-called election is a major victory for those who intend to put weapons into space at such an enormous cost to the U.S. taxpayer and to world stability. He notes statements by Bush during the campaign that the U.S. would design and deploy quantum leap weapons and that Los Alamos and Sandia National Laboratories would play a major role in the development of weapons that will allow the U.S. to redefine war on our terms. Both laboratories have been deeply involved in space-based laser work. Democrat Al Gore maintained during the campaign that any missile defense system should be limited in its scope. The strong stand against missile defense and Star Wars was taken by Green Party candidate Ralph Nader and Socialist Party candidate David McReynolds. The power structure of the U.S. gathers together at the Council of Foreign Relations, a 3,000-member group that includes among its members those who are considered the top figures in government. Most of the now former leading officials in the Clinton administration, for example, Clinton's predecessor, George Bush, was a member along with many of his top aides. Of the new Bush-Cheney administration, Council on Foreign Relations members include Cheney, Rice, and Secretary of State Colin Powell. Stephen J. Hadley is also an extremely active member. Indeed, in 2000, he gave speeches on missile defense at both the Council's National Conference and the National Program Meeting. The presentation of the National Program Meeting was entitled, "Should the New Administration Deploy a National Missile Defense?" There are many members from the U.S. banks and corporations and media too. Indeed, more than a dozen editors and writers of the New York Times alone are council members, along with Diane Sawyer, Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather, Jim Lear, Barbara Walters, Katharine Graham, chairman of the Washington Post, and several of its top editors. The elite council, funded in 1921, says its mission is to serve our nation through study, debate, private and public. In 1998, it issued a report called Space, Commerce, and National Security, written by Air Force Colonel Frank Klotz, described by the military fellow of the Council on Foreign Relations. described as a military fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. In summary, the report declared, the most immediate risk of the United States in the years ahead is to sustain and extend its leadership in the increasingly intertwined fields of military and commercial space. This requires a robust and continuous presence in space. Really? In summary, the report declared, the most immediate task of the United States in the years ahead is to sustain and extend its leadership in the increasingly intertwined field of military and commercial space. This requires a robust and continuous presence in space. Oh my gosh, that came from a report in 1998, Space, Commerce, and National Security. I'm going to end here, you guys. We are on page 63. We're at a new subtitle. Oh, rats. Come on, Mama. I'll just mark it with pen, I guess. And then I'll come back tomorrow. We want to get through this book. I am excited. I'm going to do another quick video. I found other books and I want to share them with you. So put your courage feet on. Thanks for watching my videos, and thanks for taking the time to hear this information. I think it's valuable, and please buy the book. If my reading is boring to you, then buy the book. It's a very quick book. You can get it on Amazon, although I think after today I don't think I'm going to ever use Amazon again. You go to Abe's Books, I'm pretty sure abesbooks.com, and then you can get Karl Grossman's book there. So put your courage feet on, you guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.